Synchronicity, an interesting term and an interesting concept. Carl Jung was the one that developed this concept of synchronicity, describing the simultaneous occurrence of events or coincidences, which apparently have no clear cause, but are deeply meaningful. And I think so often people say, oh, coincidences are just random. But if we really look carefully into our lives, we realize that words that are said, experiences that we have, events that occur in our lives can very much have meaning to them if we take the time to really look at that. So today, I'm really pleased to have someone on the show today who's going to talk about that. Her name is Dr. Marni Hill Foderaro, and she authored the book, God Came to My Garage Sale. And she literally talks about her life experiences and the synchronicity that has occurred for her and how that has made a whole difference in the quality of life that she has. And in the book, she really talks about how that can affect our lives to where we can literally, if we're aware of that, experience some amazing miracles in our lives. So look forward to having you join us, and we look forward to having her on the show.
At the end of the day, it's not about what you have or even what you've accomplished. It's about what you've done with those accomplishments. It's about who you've lifted up, who you've made better. It's about what you've given back. Denzel Washington. Welcome to Inspire Vision. Our sole purpose is to elevate the lives of others and to inspire you to do the same.
Hey folks, Dr. Doug here. Thanks for joining us today. Again, really pleased to have Dr. Marni Hill Foderaro on the show with us today. And I really mispronounced that.
That's all right. Foderaro.
How do you pronounce that last name?
It is Foderaro.
Foderaro. Okay,
I say it wrong though too, so it's
that's
no
as
big
bad
deal.
as Gul Branson. So you should just go by Dr. Marni, just like I go by Dr. Doug.
Yep. Okay.
Anyway, really pleased to have you on the show today. I know you've got a message that's going to really be powerful for a lot of people that are listening. So tell the folks a little bit about yourself, your history, and how on earth did you get to this point? Because here you are, you've got your PhD, you've done postgraduate work, all of that type of stuff. You've taught for years, and all of a sudden here you are writing an incredible book and doing something entirely different.
Yeah, well, let's see. I was very happy living the American dream in the Chicago suburbs. I raised my family there. I taught for 35 years as a high school special ed teacher,
Wow.
12 of those years as an adjunct professor at Northern Illinois University. And I was busy volunteering and enjoying, finishing my advanced degree, but just enjoying life, just believing I was living the American dream. And, I always knew that there were a lot of secrets that my now ex-husband, had, but I just ignored so many red flags, like many people do, because I wanted to, keep our family together and just, I was living this beautiful life. But at one point, there was a defining moment where I no longer could just ignore this. And I had to leave and filed for divorce, actually escaped with my life, still have some concerns about my safety, as survivors oftentimes do.
Mhm.
But, I was so thrilled that I had the strength to just realize my value and my worth, and that I just needed to be in a healthy situation, and staying together for my adult children wouldn't necessarily be the best thing for them either, because that would be giving a message to them that, someone could treat you a certain way and you just put up with it.
Right.
And, but, it wasn't until, I thought I was fine. I escaped it. Of course, there were legal hassles and chaos. And, I had to, when you're dealing with someone who has narcissistic tendencies and, basically threatened me saying, don't you dare divorce me, or else. You're in for, a lot of challenges, but it wasn't until I realized that parental alienation was part of my domestic violence that my world really came crashing crashing down.
Define
And
parental alienation for the audience.
well, sure, there's a lot of definitions, and you could actually go into discussing this for hours and hours and hours. But basically, it happens oftentimes in a separation or divorce situation where one parent wants to destroy the other parent for whatever reason. And they, like in my case, they take your home, they take all your money, they take all your belongings, they take your friends. Some people lose their family members. Definitely you lose the neighborhood to lies and smears and just they try to destroy you in any way that they can. But when they realize that they can't be successful there, they then start using the children. And in my case, luckily I didn't have custody issues because both of my children were adults, but they brainwash the kids. It's very much like a cult. So they get the kids to align with them using so many different tactics. There are books and books and books and research on this kind of phenomenon that happens to both men and women, moms and dads, and it's like a physical death. It's like you've really lost a child. You go through all the same stages of grief, and so when I realized parental alienation, where I had a loving, beautiful relationship at one point, or for many, many years, up to 20 years, just to have it severed completely. And there's, when that happens, not only do the children cut off all contact with you, they cut off all contact with the entire side of your family. And they can actually be used as weapons just to fight this other parent's war against you. I certainly never thought that would be part of my story, my life, but it was.
Yeah.
And so that was the big shocker. And then, I'm just in survival mode, just trying to hold everything together, keep my job going. I had a couple of years until I retired from teaching, and had so many bills to pay and all that kind of thing. So I just kept, the high ground and just did what I needed to do. But when you suffer traumas like domestic violence, or whether it's a near-death experience where you have a car accident or something like that, oftentimes your spirit is, wakes up to what is really important in this world, and you can become connected or reconnected with God or spirit or different, experiences. And that's kind of what happened to me. It was like I had a spiritual awakening. I always was a good person. I always believed in goodness and honesty and peace and light and all those things. But so I already had a foundation, but my whole being was opened up to just being aware of signs and synchronicities. Things that I thought were coincidences were really kind of divine intervention. And too many things came my way and gave me the proof that I needed to realize that there's much bigger things going on here in the world. And at some point, I really believe that goodness does overpower the darkness. So that was my journey. And I did have a garage sale. I had many garage sales over the years, but when I lost everything, I did have a garage sale that I did have some pretty amazing miracles happen. And it led me to write my book. Here's my book. God Came to My Garage Sale. And it was endorsed by James Redfield, who wrote the Celestine Prophecy. It was endorsed by some famous psychic mediums, the Ions community, which is the near-death experience people, supported me in what I was doing. And that opened the door to being involved as a co-author in 4 best-selling books, in addition to this, as well as writing guest articles for magazines and appearing on podcasts like your podcast here.
Well, and that's great, and it's really interesting how, so often we experience things in our lives, and in many cases, we can either be the victim which sometimes occurs for a while when you just don't quite know how to get out of that. And at some point in time, something happens where you say enough is enough. And
Definitely.
as you did, you moved away from that, and obviously still, even today, still kind of suffer from a few things there,
Oh,
as
sure. You
far
know,
as,
the abusers don't let up. They still, if
no,
they can't control you, they do everything they can to silence you and control how other people view you. And then they also just use the legal system and use the children, but they use, I shouldn't say use the legal system, they abuse it with frivolous lawsuits and things just to keep the chaos going, keep the control, keep the fear, all of that. But no, I chose to, I know my worth, and luckily some amazing people came into my life. And I now retired to the Caribbean. I'm living in a beautiful location where I'm immersed in nature and just the beauty of God's world. And I am so blessed. I still have to be vigilant and look over my shoulder. And at some point, hopefully that will end. I mean, it's been over 6 years,
yeah.
but yes, I chose not to go the victim route. But I definitely am a survivor, and I'm slowly finding my voice, because abusers, and people with malevolent agendas, they want to silence you. They want to keep that going. And I think it's very important, because there's so many people that have suffered challenges in their lives, including domestic violence, that it's good to hear other people and how they handle it. So that could maybe give them hope and inspire them to have a happier life.
Well, exactly. And what's really unique and really good about what's come out of that is look where you are today, as you just shared, and the
Yeah.
fact that you were able to share your experiences in that book and in many others, and literally start to lift lives and touch lives because of the experiences you had. So moving out of that victim mentality and moving into that abundance mentality and saying, you know what, I've had these experiences. Yeah, they were real, but I'm going to move away from that and see if I can't help other people who may be having the same type of experiences. If I can share my story, it might help them to make that first step to get out of their situation
Yeah,
too.
most definitely. And, doing that also has just opened up so much happiness for me. I wake up grateful and happy every day, no matter what challenges I face. And the abuser is still working on, his mission to destroy. But I choose not to partake in that. And so when you decide, it's a choice. When you choose to just live in light and goodness, the doors open up for more people to come into your life that, you can form meaningful relationships with, based on trust and honesty and goodness, and experiences just are amazing that happen. I'm just amazed by how wonderful my life turned out. It's sad that I don't necessarily have one of my children in my life right now, but as I look at it, they have their own journey too. And I can only do so much. At some point, light bulbs go on, just like it took me, almost 30 years for a light bulb to go on. It's got to be harder for children that are, brainwashed and like to believe that both their parents have their best interest. But
Yes,
that's not
yes.
always the case.
So God came to my garage sale. Now, was that a
Yeah.
real garage sale?
It was, yeah, actually, but
Okay.
the story itself, actually, the story has 13 vignettes, 13 miracles that happened. That, of course, all didn't happen in one garage sale. It's a spiritual fiction. So,
Okay.
it takes place in Indiana, in a town I've never even been to, but, because I'm from Illinois, but it's still the Midwest. So I did do some changes. Of course, everything was really, it was inspired by real situations,
Yes.
definitely. And from hearing other people's experiences that was incorporated into the story. So yes, I experienced some miracles that were just amazing. And it really did lead me. I was just compelled to write this book, and didn't realize that writing then would be my outlet, or, you know, what I would end up doing. I wake up and the first thing I want to do is start writing.
Oh,
So
wow. Well, let's talk about the book. Let's talk about your experiences.
sure.
You refer to them as synchronicities,
Yes.
which I think is great. Is probably more politically correct than some of the other things, but that's okay. I mean, you know, God can touch our hearts. He can bless us. He can bring opportunities to us. We can do that ourselves by changing who we are and who
Mhm.
we have become. So share with the audience, you talked about 13 different
Yeah,
things.
major.
I'd love for you to share with the audience, what were your experiences that caused you to write the book and to really put all of this together? Because as you said, the experiences really were there. You just have kind of fictionalized them a tad to make
Sure.
it work a little bit better in the book.
Sure. Yes. Well, I would say, you know, one of the first things that happened actually came through a television set where I was given a message, and I was shown some things on a television set from a departed loved one, from a friend who had passed away, and time stood still. So what really was a matter of maybe 20 minutes, in my experience, I felt it was a day, you know, possibly um, 10 hours sitting there, when really it was just a short time. And actually many of the experiences I've since had and had at the garage sale just all went into slow motion. And, you know, people that talk about near-death experiences say that there's no time. And I certainly understand that concept from experiencing, you know, that there was just no time. But, you know, so through the television set, I was shown, I was actually even shown an elderly lady I had never seen before that was part of this, you know, almost like a movie. And it was months later, I happened to be helping someone clean out, you know, this person had passed away, and I saw this picture of this old woman. That was the exact same woman I saw on that television screen. I had never met her.
Wow.
It was the exact same person. And that was part of the, you know, my friend had always wanted me to meet her. So that was one experience. I had another big experience. The first chapter is with dragonflies, where I was saying goodbye to my home, going to the cul-de-sac, and really, I would say actually with each of these experiences, somehow I just calm myself and I breathe, and I just really focus on love and gratitude in my heart. And that's when things kind of open up. So that's something that's similar with everything. But the dragonflies, I was looking at my home, just basically saying goodbye. And even though so much of it was make believe, it was not the fairy tale I thought it was, I still was very grateful for that time. And I was thrilled that I was able to raise my children there. And I had wonderful memories and still do. But I was saying goodbye to that home, and really centering myself just in a very deep, you know, almost a prayer. And one dragonfly came and serenaded me. And within 5-10 minutes, there were 50 dragonflies just circling me. I even knew at one point to pull out my cell phone to videotape this, because I didn't
Really?
think anyone would believe me.
Yeah.
And sure, you know, so that was one experience. And then again, that was also in slow motion. And so I could see the different generations of dragonflies. I felt like I had babies and toddlers and teenagers and grandparents. And I mean, it was just, it was just generations and generations of these very, very slow moving dragonflies around me. So that was another experience that just, you know, blew me away. And just like a lot of people that experience some of these miracles, you don't talk about it right away. You know, it takes a while for it to sink in. I mean, there's people I know, I've heard of people that have had near-death experiences and, you know, felt that they met God and did this or that, but they waited, 20 years to tell anyone, or 10 years or something. And I understand that too, because it's almost like your body and your mind, it's shielded from what really happened. It's just amazing. But, when you have one after another, like I even remember an old man that came to the garage sale, and he looked just like my junior high teacher. And I write about this, the old man in the white suit. But there were miracles that happened during that time, and time stood still. And at the same time, I don't remember him even really coming to the garage sale or leaving. Just somehow he was there, and just sort of disappeared. And there were a number of people too that came to the garage sale that were there, and I interacted with them in a very unique way. But then within moments, they were just gone. They were just gone.
And what were you getting from that? What type of experiences, what you would call synchronicities or signs? I mean, you really talk about mindfulness and honesty and compassion, forgiveness, peace, love, light.
Right.
You talk about all of those things. I went for a walk yesterday, and I live in a nice area, as far as I'm in the mountains, and it's just a nice, pretty valley. And as I was walking, I thought, I got to take a picture of the water down here in the mountains, because there's still a little bit of snow on them and so forth. and I sat and I thought, you know what, it's easy for me just to go walk. It's something else to stop, take a deep breath, and just absorb the beauty that I live in and the surroundings.
Yeah.
And I think, one of the things that's coming to my mind as you're sharing your story here is that so often we are so busy that we never take the time to stop and appreciate nature, appreciate the love of our friends, the blessings, as you say, the gratitude for the things that we do have, rather than focusing on things that we don't have.
Right.
And I love that. But how do you find, I mean, here you've been able to do that, but how do you find you help people to be able to slow down and start to really listen and enjoy and absorb, to the point where, they're not going to all have the same type of experiences you obviously have had, but to where they're going to allow themselves to just listen to that inner voice, listen to whatever it happens to be, where they can actually gain some insight. I know that when I was walking, as I said, I decided to take a picture, and, I'm looking at it, and just with my phone, and I'm looking at it going, well, it's okay. It's kind of bright because the sun was out and so forth. And I put my sunglasses on, and all of a sudden, everything looked so much beautiful. The skies were bluer, the clouds were more distinct. And I took them off again, and then looked again. And I thought, you know what, there's a lesson here, that, sometimes with that, it happened to be that they were Polaroid lenses. And so it changed things a bit. But I thought to myself, okay, is that good or bad that I can look through a lens and the picture changes and it's more beautiful? What does that mean? And then it really correlated with what you're talking about here. I thought, you know what? If we look at life through a lens of gratitude, one of love, one of compassion, one of forgiveness, it changes our entire picture.
Right. Right. In fact, when it comes to my ex-spouse, who has caused so much harm to me, I don't wish him any ill will, and never have. I wish him healing, because obviously he has some past traumas, to have the need to hurt other people the way he does. There's some real issues that he has, and it's unfortunate that, our children are brought into that. But the lens that we look at life is very, very important. And you asked a very good question. Like, how do I inspire others with, to kind of be aware of these things? And I think, all you can do is live by example, speak your truth, share your experiences. Even just in writing this book, I've been contacted by so many people that say the book has been very life-changing for them because it made them stop and be aware. So yes, we all get very busy. In fact, I was very, very busy in my life, in my perfect fairy tale American dream life. And I was almost proud of how busy I was. But I think even back then, I still took time to observe the wonder and beauty of nature. And I know I instilled that in my children because we would stop all the time and just look at the most minuscule bug or the patterns on a leaf or something like that. We would, I know and that was part of my life growing up too, that my parents instilled in me. It wasn't just do this, do that, rush. We stopped and enjoyed all the sensory experiences in nature, listening to the birds' songs, learning different calls, looking at animal tracks, looking at, the sun, tasting different plants and berries off the trees, so just using a multisensory approach. But I think it's not like my goal is to just, open up the world's consciousness to, signs and synchronicities or God's blessings. But I think living by example and speaking the truth and sharing in my magazine articles or in my books, just is a way of reaching a lot of people. And this past year, with all the challenges that so many people have had, it did open up a lot more with podcasts. And so you can be on the other side of the world. I'm in the Caribbean right now, but we can be having a conversation, which, probably wouldn't have happened a couple of years ago, but now it's something that's more commonplace, and it's, bringing people together. And so I think you also have to be in a certain point where you are open for changes or appreciation of things. I am retired now, so I don't have the daily grind of, waking up to an alarm clock and, rushing out the door and going in traffic to work. And that not everyone has that luxury. I'm at this stage in my life that, I taught for 35 years, and now I have a different path that I'm taking. And I also chose to move to the Caribbean, even though I found beauty in Illinois. I found beauty wherever I am, in the prairie and in the seasons and everything. I just, this is a wonderful journey for me to be here in the Caribbean. I'm experiencing a life that suits me very well, at this point. So I would just encourage, your viewers, your listeners to just be mindful of people and what they have to say. And if something resonates with you, look into it a little bit more and just stop. I think you even mentioned breathing, like you took a breath. That's a huge part of everything. I found that when I have these experiences, I do take a deep breath a lot of times before I meditate. And, you hear about other people, conducting meditation events. There's always breathing involved and just really trying to center yourself and quiet your mind. And that's part of it.
Well, and, we all get so busy. I've been there too. Okay. We all are so busy. In fact, just on a previous interview, we were talking about this to some degree and talking about how we're so focused on do this, do that, do this, do that. And we find our lives are just totally busy. We don't have any time. I have some friends that it's like, I'd love to get together, but I'm just too busy. Yeah. And, and maybe in a couple of weeks or whatever. And what's interesting about that is it's like, slow down. At what point in time can you just kind of stop for a minute and look at that and going, is that serving me well, right, or not?
And one thing that people could ask themselves is, you have time for what's important to you. So think about that. You can make time for what's important to you. If it might mean waking up an hour earlier to do something, it might mean rearranging your schedule to do something, but we have time for what's important to us. So when we don't pursue some of these things, getting together with friends, or having some more quiet time for yourself, or just sitting down and reading a book or taking a walk, it means that we really had something else that was more pressing that we really needed to do. But at some point, just like how I choose to live my life, despite the traumas I've gone through and other people's efforts to bring me down, I'm choosing to take the high road and to live a positive, loving life. I'm choosing to take time to walk in nature, to swim in the ocean, and that type of thing. And you might have these ideas of what you want to do, and it may not happen immediately. It took a few years planning before I eventually made it to the Caribbean. So things don't happen immediately, but if it's something that is worthwhile for you, you can make that happen and make it a priority.
Yes. And just realize that, we all have the same amount of time. What I find interesting is as I take people through a values program,
Okay.
and it's fascinating because when I did it myself, it's a very deep dive into what are your true innate values.
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes going through that can really surprise someone. And all of a sudden they realize that the direction that they're heading doesn't necessarily correlate with those core values that really are so important to them. And it takes a while for them to get away from what I should do and what
Right.
what society expects me to do. But when you do that, all of a sudden it changes your whole perspective. And hopefully that can become the initiatory step towards going, what, I got to slow down a little bit and really
Right.
look at what's important to me, because if I can identify that, I can then move in a direction that's going to help me really be purposeful in my
Right. And
life.
people are reevaluating their jobs and what they're doing. They're reevaluating their relationships and realizing that maybe even a lifelong friend that they were trauma bonded to in some way, and that's not really a healthy relationship. And it takes a lot of courage to step away from that, to know your worth, know your value, and stick to your values. If I didn't do that, I would have stayed in an abusive situation. In fact, I was threatened to stay in that. You better not divorce me.
Yeah.
Don't you dare divorce me. But you know what? When I had to be true to myself and to my core values, and I would be living a lie if I continued to stay in something that was very unhealthy. So I think, especially this year, people are evaluating all sorts of things, when it's relationships, whether it's where they live, what kind of work they do, how they want to spend their time. I mean, it's a wonderful thing to just realize, wait a minute, I might need to make a change here. And then to have the courage, to do that, to make that change, but a lot of things have to line up too. I mean, a lot of, whether it's your job, your family, that type of thing, a lot of things have to line up for you to be able to do it. But it's so important for people to really stop and think about their life and what's important to them, and live accordingly.
And it changes. I mean, you spent 35 years teaching special needs kids, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Was that a passion?
It was very much so. It was. I really enjoyed it. I'm still in contact with so many of my students. Many of them are older and have their own kids now. But I really have found that I went in a different direction. Now, I did recently just teach a writing workshop class at our local museum, and that was a lot of fun. But I don't have a huge need to get back into the schools and especially now with how things are changing. The path I'm taking is a good one for me right now. And it's very, very healing. I mean, I'm finding the writing therapeutic, because it's very scary. There's a lot of fear that goes along with being a survivor and to speak your truth. And, without so many details, or, I would never slander another person, anything like that. We all, but I know what's happened to me, and I can kind of, as long as I speak the truth, I'm okay with that. But it's morphed into, my whole mission is kind of morphed into, and I can tell people about my book and about spirituality, but sometimes when I mention, and I wrote an article for Eden magazine. Actually, I just did it, just came out this May. I'm in Eden magazine, the one with Mariel Hemingway on, I think that's her, one of the Hemingways on the cover. But, where I mentioned, and I talk about domestic violence, or I talk about surviving parental alienation. That's when the people start saying, oh my gosh, I've experienced this too. Or, my husband went through this kind of abuse, and or this has happened in our family. And so you really it's okay to share that, life isn't just perfect. We all have challenges, but it's a matter of how you handle those challenges that makes or breaks you. And that can resonate with other people. And then eventually they can look into the spiritual part, because their minds and hearts and souls will be opened as well.
Yes. And, you talk about purpose and passion. And I think, oftentimes we bring these two words together saying, well, it's a purpose and passion. But as you're talking about this, I mean, you have a fundamental purpose that I sense. And yet you have found that you fulfill that purpose with different passions. So initially 35 years working with special needs kids, now writing this book and sharing your stories and doing the writing and the podcasting and some of these other things you're doing. So you've changed your passion, but what was that underlying purpose? I know the answer, but I want you to tell me, what is that underlying purpose?
Oh, I'd love to hear what you think it is.
I think your underlying purpose is to lift the lives of others.
Sure.
To make a difference. And, when you have that type of purpose, and then as you say, what? As life changes, our passions change. And all of a sudden, you're going to do this, you're going to do that. But the reality is that purpose becomes the foundation for really living a meaningful life and really touching the lives of others. So,
and as an empathetic person, and I'm sure you interview, and you seem like a very empathetic person as well, concerned about others. You can almost feel their pain. You can almost feel their joy. I mean, that's a huge part of who I am. Sometimes it's been to a fault where I will overgive, or I will help out when, they don't really want help, but I can sense that they need it. I have to rein myself back in and say, listen, everyone has their own journey. Not everyone, I don't have the answers for everyone. So, but being an empath is a big part of just wanting to enrich the lives of other people. I really have, and I don't wish anything negative on anyone. I wish goodness to everyone. And I feel even people with, the malevolent, almost Jezebel spirit, there could be some goodness in there. And it might take a miracle, but miracles do happen.
Well, and, as James Redfield said, and I love the statement that he makes in your book, he says, you're guiding the reader on an insightful journey towards spiritual awareness and meaningful self-actualization.
Yeah.
I love that.
Wasn't that amazing? Yeah. He's amazing. James Redfield's amazing. And he actually has, international group prayers, and he has what's called the Celestine Vision, kind of a takeoff on his series of books with the Celestine Prophecy, but he's still out there with his purpose and his passion. And I've been so just honored and blessed to have so many people endorse my book and say such kind things, because they really are seeing the goodness that can come out of, handling life's challenges with love and light, and, wishing that for others.
Well, and you obviously have that purpose, you have that passion, and you are lifting the lives of others. two questions. Number one, first of all, how can they find your book? And then second question, what's the message you'd like to share as a final message for our audience today?
All right. So let's see, my book. So God Came to My Garage Sale. It just won the 2020 Best Books Award, which was pretty cool. That can be found on Amazon, at the Balboa Press website, which is a division of Hay House Publishing. And it can be found at Barnes and Noble. And then every now and then I Google my name and I see that my book is in numerous bookstores. So you could just check your bookstores. You know, I've had book signings nationwide. So, you know, it's out there. And of course, if you're in the Caribbean, it's on all of the US Virgin Islands. So it's everywhere there.
Good.
So yeah, and the book is only like $11. I mean, it's not, you can get an e-version for $3. It's not a huge investment. And certainly not a moneymaker. It was a passion, you know, with a purpose. That's what it was. The message for everyone, I would just say, be open to signs and synchronicities. Breathe, slow down. And, you know, when challenges come your way, make a choice. And hopefully you won't choose the victim role, that you will rise above and choose the high road, filled with love, compassion, honesty, and goodness. And that would be, you know, then good things will start coming your way, more amazing things, amazing awareness, and the lives that you will touch will also enrich yours.
Thank you, Marni. This has been a great discussion. I really appreciate you being on the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's been an absolute honor, Dr. Doug.
Well, I appreciate it. And folks, thanks for listening. Hope you'll enjoy it and hope you'll join us again soon.